Beneath the official histories and polished memorials lies another war, one fought in shadow, buried under concrete and silence. Its weapons were not always guns, and its battles were often erased before they began. What remains are fragments, intercepted whispers, sealed tunnels, and files stripped of meaning by black ink. Follow them long enough, and you start to wonder if the war ever truly ended, or if it simply learned to hide. In January 1944, the British WWII service, monitoring encrypted German traffic from a listening post at Chicksands Priory, intercepted a fragment of a high-priority Wehrmacht message. The signal originated near Nordhausen, Thuringia, and referenced Projekt Morgenlicht, a designation never before encountered in Allied codebooks. Analysts at Bletchley Park noted its unusual classification, Sonderstufe Schwarz, an ultra-restricted category used only for Hitler's most sensitive directives. By March, reconnaissance flights of the Harz Mountains began revealing anomalies, rail sidings ending at sheer rock faces, venting steam through camouflaged grills, and heavy vehicle movement at night. Ground agents embedded in the region reported the arrival of flatbed freight cars bearing oversized, tarpaulin-covered loads, escorted by SS Totenkopfverbände guards. Locals claimed the trains ran without whistle or headlamp, halting only at a new tunnel mouth near Waffelben. No factory output was ever seen leaving the site. On 9th of April 1945, elements of the US 3rd Armored Division reached the Harz region during their eastward push. Lieutenant Colonel Robert F. Stetson's after-action report, declassified in 1982, described heavy subterranean fortifications at coordinates 51-35 and 10-45-E, with multiple access portals sealed from within by reinforced concrete slabs. Attached photographs show collapsed rock where demolition charges had been placed in a precise pattern, the kind used for permanent denial of entry. The only surviving documentation from the scene came from captured German engineers, held briefly at an improvised POW camp near Osterode. Their interrogation transcripts, preserved in a War Department microfilm labeled XN-114, reveal consistent denials of the site's purpose. However, one engineer, a 47-year-old named Hans-Jürgen Reutemann, made an unguarded remark about a sunrise that was never to rise. The phrase was underlined twice in the transcript by an unidentified US intelligence officer. The Nordhausen complex was initially believed to be an extension of Mittelwerk, the underground factory producing V-2 rockets using forced labor from Mittelbau-Dora concentration camp. However, post-war interviews with surviving Dora inmates yielded conflicting accounts. Some recalled being ordered to build reinforced spherical chambers rather than the linear assembly halls used for rockets. Others swore they saw lead-lined crates stamped with the Reichsadler, but lacking any munitions markings. None of these testimonies appeared in the official Nuremberg evidence files. In 1951, the US Army Corps of Engineers conducted a classified survey of the Harz tunnel system, ostensibly for geological research. The surviving technical diagrams, retrieved via FOIA in 1997, show unexplained heat anomalies in ground-penetrating scans beneath the collapsed Morgenlicht sector. Attempts to bore through the rubble were abandoned after reports of structural instability and possible ordnance contamination. Civilian access to the site was prohibited under a Bundeswehr training area designation. The Soviet occupation zone records complicate the picture further. A 1946 NKVD memo, intercepted by Western intelligence, mentions the Harz sector as already neutralized by enemy self-destruction prior to our arrival. Yet Soviet field photographs from the same period show uniformed men standing at a large blast door intact and unopened. No subsequent record in Soviet archives indicates whether entry was achieved. By the 1960s, Projekt Morgenlicht had become a ghost entry in Allied intelligence indexes. Internal CIA memoranda from that period, stamped eyes only, debated whether the project's objective had been a new class of propulsion system, a hardened command center for post-surrender resistance, or an experimental energy weapon. None of the theories matched all known physical evidence. One fragment of supporting material surfaced in 1978, a rusted metal placard recovered from a scrapyard in Kassel, bearing the words Morgenlicht Versuchsanlage, Zutritt verboten, Morgenlicht Test Facility, entry forbidden, in fading Gothic script. Its chain of custody before the scrapyard was never established. In 1989, following the collapse of East Germany, a team of German historians gained temporary access to the Wofleben area. They discovered faint traces of a rail spur buried under forest growth, leading to a filled-in tunnel mouth. Ground-penetrating radar confirmed the presence of a void approximately 40 meters beyond the blockage, but no excavation was permitted by the newly unified government, citing environmental hazard. The only first-hand account suggesting what might have been inside came from an elderly former Wehrmacht officer, Oberstleutnant Friedrich Kehlmann, interviewed in 1991. Speaking on camera, he claimed Morgenlicht was never meant for the war in Europe. It was for the war after. When pressed, he refused further detail, adding only, "It would have outlived Berlin." No definitive link has ever been established between Projekt Morgenlicht and any known German wartime weapons program. The surviving photographs, maps, and intercepted communications form a web of implication without resolution. The site remains under restricted military control, its coordinates absent from public topographic maps. To this day, no verified human being has entered the sealed chambers since April 1945. Whatever was built inside those mountains, it was buried by its creators, and the silence has held for over 80 years. On 18th of September 1952, at 04:30 hours, Royal Navy clearance diver Petty Officer Harold Wren descended into the cold waters off Bornholm Island, tasked with surveying the wreck of the German M-class minesweeper M343. Officially, the mission was routine, confirm the condition of the hull before it was used as a demolition training target. Wren's tether went slack 20 minutes into the dive. When the line was hauled in, it ended in strands of frayed cord, the fibers sheared clean. His body was never recovered. The operation file, labeled RNOP Baltic 27, should have closed, with a notation of accidental loss at sea. Instead, the post-mission report was stamped with an unusual restriction: Cabinet Office eyes only. Within weeks, a Danish naval intelligence briefing crossed the desk of Commander Geoffrey Knight at Whitehall. It referenced a wartime German manifest listing, Behälter 47, Container 47, as part of a May 1945 Kriegsmarine convoy ordered to scuttle classified cargo before advancing Soviet forces could seize it. The manifest's accompanying coordinates matched the resting place of M343. The entry for Container 47 bore no description, only a notation in blue pencil: Nicht öffnen, do not open. According to a Danish archive memo, the container was believed to be cylindrical, approximately 4 meters in length, encased in lead cladding, and secured with an unfamiliar locking mechanism. The file included a hand-drawn schematic taken from an anonymous post-war informant, supposedly a surviving crewman from M343. His statement claimed the container was loaded at Kiel under SS supervision, with 2 armed officers posted on the deck until departure. No other cargo on the ship received such treatment. In October 1948, Soviet divers operating from the salvage vessel Kommuna reportedly located and retrieved an object from the same seabed sector. Western intercepts of Soviet naval communications recorded phrases such as secured payload and transport to Leningrad Institute. The mission logs for Kommuna's deployment that month have never been found in Russian archives, and no public record mentions the recovery of German material from Bornholm waters. By 1955, rumors circulated among Baltic fishermen of black water slicks that left an oily film on boats and burned the skin. The Danish Ministry of Fisheries dismissed these reports as superstition, yet internal correspondence with their Ministry of Defense acknowledged localized chemical anomalies near the M343 wreck site. In 1964, a joint NATO hydrographic survey conducted sonar sweeps around Bornholm, The classified annex to the survey report, declassified in part in 2002, shows the outline of the M343 hull and a second large object lying 15 meters to its northeast, partially buried in silt. The object's dimensions match the Container 47 schematic almost exactly. Attempts to dive on the site in 1971, using a West German team from the Bundesmarine, were abruptly cancelled after only one descent. The dive leader's log entry for that day, preserved in a private collection, reads, "Pressure gauge irregularities at depth. Heard metallic resonance, like something shifting inside. Ordered immediate ascent." The file then goes cold until 1990, when a Danish parliamentary inquiry into Cold War intelligence cooperation uncovered references to Bornholm Protocol 5, an agreement between Denmark, the UK, and West Germany to keep the area under passive surveillance without active recovery attempts. The stated rationale was environmental hazard containment. No technical details were included. In 2008, a retired Soviet naval officer, Captain Second Rank Yuri Panin, gave an interview to a St. Petersburg journalist in which he claimed to have guarded a sealed chamber at the Leningrad Institute of Naval Technology in the early 1950s. He described the chamber as cold, always cold, and said it contained a German coffin made of metal, humming like a power station. He recalled being told it was war loot from the Baltic, cross-referencing Panin's account with wartime convoy records and post-war intelligence files leaves one plausible but unconfirmed narrative, that the Soviets recovered one of two identical containers, leaving the second, Container 47, still resting off Bornholm. Whether its twin was dismantled, destroyed, or remains hidden in a Russian facility is unknown. Today, the wreck of M343 lies in 64 meters of water, within a zone marked on Danish maritime charts as restricted military activity. Fishing nets are routinely lost there, and sonar buoys are deployed seasonally by the Danish Navy. No public dive permits have been issued for the site in over 30 years. Container 47 has never been opened in recorded history. Its purpose, weapon, prototype, or something else entirely, is absent from every surviving Kriegsmarine log. All that remains are the testimonies of vanished divers, the careful omissions of intelligence files, and the cold, shifting silence of the Baltic Sea above it. On 23 April 1945, with northern Italy collapsing under Allied pressure, OSS intercept stations at Caserta picked up coded transmissions between a retreating German logistics unit and an unknown station somewhere east of Trieste. The traffic referenced Eisenfeder, Iron Quill, and included instructions for a multi-truck convoy to move under blackout toward the Alpine passes. The messages carried Luftwaffe encryption keys, but were routed through Wehrmacht channels, an irregularity that caught the attention of OSS desk officer Captain Warren P. Haskell. 2 days later, aerial reconnaissance identified a column of 5 heavy Opel Blitz trucks, each under tarpaulin, moving north from Verona along secondary roads. The convoy bore Luftwaffe tail numbers, but the cargo manifests obtained from captured field clerks described the contents only as Sanitätsmaterial, medical equipment, packed in wooden crates. Witnesses along the route recalled each truck escorted by armed guards wearing SS runes, a mismatch for a humanitarian cargo. The OSS assigned the job to a small interdiction team under Major Daniel Croft, already operating in the region with partisans from the Garibaldi brigades. The intercept plan, codenamed Operation Iron Quill, was to capture the convoy intact near the mountain village of Rovereto before it could cross into Austria. On the evening of 26 April, the operation was set in motion. According to Croft's post-mission statement, they established a roadblock using felled trees and disguised anti-vehicle mines along a narrow stretch of road. At 2200 hours, the convoy approached, but before the OSS team could spring the trap, gunfire erupted from the opposite side of the valley. Through field glasses, Croft saw the convoy's lead truck shredded by a burst from a Degtyaryov machine gun, a Soviet weapon not issued to any Allied units in theater. A second, larger group of armed men, moving with coordinated discipline, advanced on the convoy from the north. Croft described them as wearing mixed uniforms, some German field jackets without insignia, others Soviet greatcoats stripped of rank badges. Their speech, overheard during shouted orders, was Russian. In the confusion, 2 trucks were driven off the road and overturned. Croft ordered his team to withdraw rather than engage an unknown force in the dark. By morning, the road was empty. The wrecked trucks had been stripped of their contents, leaving only splintered crates and torn tarpaulins. One abandoned crate, recovered by Croft's men, contained precisely arranged lead shielding panels. No medical instruments, no pharmaceuticals. The report Croft filed was forwarded to OSS Bari headquarters, then to Washington. There, it disappeared. When Croft requested a copy in 1947, the file he received was blank, but for the cover sheet and his own signature. He resigned from the OSS later that year. In 1963, during the declassification of certain wartime records, a memorandum surfaced from the Soviet NKGB to the Stavka High Command, dated May 1945. It boasted of securing critical Reich research materials from enemy convoy at Brenner approach. No mention was made of what the materials were, only that they were to be sent to facility number 12 in Sverdlovsk. Eyewitness testimony from surviving partisans decades later described the crates as being roughly 2 meters long, stenciled with Luftwaffe eagles but sealed with wax stamps bearing the SS Death's Head. One partisan, Luciano Benassi, claimed he was paid in gold coins by a Russian officer to guide the mysterious force through mountain passes after the ambush. Benassi died in 1981. His coin hoard was later authenticated as pre-war German, minting. Theories abound as to the contents of the Iron Quill convoy. Some historians argue it was a transfer of advanced avionics equipment intended for the uncompleted jet fighter projects at the Wiener Neustadt complex. Others suggest biological, warfare materials from a Luftwaffe medical testing unit, citing the unusual lead shielding and SS involvement. No theory accounts for why Soviet forces would be operating so deep in territory under imminent Allied control. In 1994, a fragment of a convoy manifest labeled Eisenfeder was discovered in the attic of a demolished building in Bolzano. It listed Objekt Blau as the shipment's final entry, with no further description. The sheet bore a Luftwaffe field stamp dated 21st April 1945, and a signature later matched to Oberst Ernst Schreiber, an officer connected to both flight testing and chemical warfare oversight. Today, no physical trace of Operation Iron Quill's cargo exists in any public archive. The location of Facility Number 12 in Sverdlovsk remains undisclosed in Russian records, and the CIA has never confirmed or denied involvement in post-war tracking of the items seized that night. The only certainty is that whatever was in those crates was important enough for 2 collapsing empires to risk a firefight on a dark Italian road, with the war's end just days away. In late October 1961, just weeks after the Berlin crisis brought NATO and the Warsaw Pact to the brink, a small CIA advance team operating under diplomatic cover in West Germany received an unusual tip from a defector in Prague. The source, an ex-Czechoslovak People's Army signals officer named Milan Havelka, claimed that an abandoned Wehrmacht communications facility lay sealed beneath a wooded ridge near the German-Czech border, untouched since April 1945. He said its code name, recorded in a surviving dispatch, was Projekt Eule, Projekt Owl. On 2 November 1961, CIA field officer Thomas A. Kincaid and 2 Bundesnachrichtendienst (BND) counterparts reached the location, a derelict bunker, entrance hidden under decades of pine growth near the village of Neualbenreuth. The exterior bore weathered Reichsadler emblems and was sealed by a rusted steel blast door welded shut. Kincaid's mission report, still partially redacted, describes finding no signs of post-war entry, though the surrounding ground showed faint, impressions consistent with heavy vehicles that had once accessed the site. The team brought in an EOD unit from the US Army's 7th Ordnance Group to cut through the door. Inside, they found a narrow corridor descending to a central chamber lined with shelves of magnetic audio tapes. thick black reels in sealed metal cases. Each case was labeled with dates from 1940 to 1945 and marked with an obsolete cipher key last seen in early war Abwehr communications. Stenciled on the chamber wall in peeling white paint was a single word, Eule. Expecting to find orders or intercepted transmissions, the analysts were stunned when initial decryption revealed the tapes were voice recordings of high-level meetings, not just German, but Allied as well. Kincaid's notes mention identifiable speech patterns of figures including Hermann Göring, Joachim von Ribbentrop, and, unsettlingly, what appeared to be fluent English speakers with mid-Atlantic accents, possibly American or British. The content reportedly described operational planning, exchange of strategic materials, and discussions of battlefield dispositions inconsistent with official wartime histories. The tapes were shipped under extreme secrecy to a secure facility in Wiesbaden for transcription. Within 3 days, all copies and notes were flown to Langley aboard a C-118 Liftmaster. According to BND liaison officer Hans Vollmer's unpublished memoir, a heated meeting between CIA and BND officials ended with the Germans being denied any further access to the material. Vollmer wrote that one CIA officer told him, "Some wars never end, they just go underground." 3 days after the removal, on 10th of November 1961, US Army engineers returned to the site with demolition charges. The entire bunker complex was collapsed inward with a controlled blast, the entryway buried under hundreds of tons of rock. A formal joint statement to the West German press claimed the demolition was due to unstable wartime munition storage. No official record of Projekt Eule appears in the CIA's declassified archives. However, a State Department cable dated 14th of November 1961, released under FOIA in 2009, references urgent shipment of audio intelligence, historical but of current operational sensitivity. The rest of the paragraph is redacted. Speculation about the tape's origin ranges from a captured Allied signals intercept archive to an unauthorized wartime backchannel between Axis and Allied officials. One fringe theory, popular among independent researchers, suggests Eule was a German intelligence operation that successfully bugged diplomatic meetings in neutral countries like Sweden, Spain, or Switzerland, compiling a library of compromising audio to be used in post-war negotiations. Another, darker theory posits that the recordings prove certain wartime atrocities were known and tacitly accepted by more parties than history records. In 1983, a retired CIA cryptographer interviewed anonymously for a Cold War oral history project hinted at a set of reels from the Czech border that were listened to once and locked away forever. He said the recordings contained voices we'd rather not have proof of. Today, the former bunker site lies within restricted Bundeswehr training grounds, fenced and patrolled. No surface traces remain, and the precise coordinates are absent from public land registries. The tape's current location is unknown. If they still exist, they may be stored in one of the CIA's deep vaults, classified beyond the reach of historians. For those who believe in Eule's authenticity, the implication is clear. Buried in that ridge was not just a record of war, but a record of the deals and betrayals that shaped the world after it. In February 1946, 3 months after the Nuremberg trials began, the Soviet Ministry of Internal Affairs issued a classified directive ordering a recovery detachment to proceed to grid reference 54-27N, 58-48EE in the Ural Mountains. The operation, designated Voron's Nest in internal cipher traffic, was justified on paper as the removal of remaining fascist material. The location, a remote mining area west of Magnitogorsk, had no documented wartime German presence. Soviet military engineers and armed NKVD guards were deployed by rail under strict radio silence. Local villagers in the hamlet of Karpovka later recounted how, in the days before the troops arrived, they saw distant plumes of black smoke rising from the high ridges, accompanied by faint detonations. The sound of low-flying aircraft at night was reported by shepherds, though no Soviet air operations were officially logged in the region at that time. An NKVD logistics ledger recovered from a Moscow archive in the 1990s lists shipments arriving. At the site, reinforced drilling equipment, portable generators, prefabricated steel doors, and, unusually, several tons of lead sheeting. The entry for 17 February notes, loading of secured items number 4 through number 9 onto flatbed trucks for immediate transfer to Chelyabinsk 40, the secret atomic research city. The description column is blacked out. Declassified GRU field sketches show a cluster of mine adits in the target area, 3 of them blocked by recent rockfalls. 2 bore distinctive concrete collaring consistent with German engineering methods used in occupied Eastern Europe. These entrances were sealed with welded steel plates, marked in faded Gothic lettering. Eigentum des Reiches, Zutritt verboten. Property of the Reich, entry forbidden. A Soviet combat engineer diary, preserved in the family. Papers of Lieutenant Alexei Samokhin offers one of the few personal glimpses into the operation. His entry for 19th of February reads, "We broke through the second portal. Inside, the smell of oil and rot. Machinery abandoned mid-use. German writing on the walls. One room had tables bolted to the floor with strange metal shells on them. Not munitions, I recognize. Officers told us to keep silent. Western intelligence first learned of Voron's nest in 1957 through the defection of former MGB captain Viktor Koval, who claimed the site was a fallback research base established by a splinter group of Nazi scientists evacuated eastward during the final months of the war. Koval insisted they had been working on devices of unusual principle, unrelated to conventional arms. According to him, the survivors were taken into Soviet custody and vanished into closed cities. Satellite imagery from US Corona reconnaissance flights in 1964 revealed the area fenced, with new structures built over 2 of the sealed mine entrances. By 1968, the entire ridge was erased from civilian maps under the guise of a geological hazard exclusion zone. No further aerial reconnaissance was attempted after the Soviets erected radar installations nearby. In 1981, a Soviet geologist, Dr. Larisa Chernov, published a paper on anomalous mineral contamination in Ural ore samples, citing unusually high lead and tungsten concentrations near Karpovka. Within weeks, the paper was withdrawn from all academic journals without explanation. Colleagues later stated she had been sent abroad for work, though no records of foreign travel exist. After the Soviet collapse, amateur historians attempted to reach the Voron's nest coordinates. One group in 1993 reported that all approaches were blocked by armed guards in unmarked uniforms. Another, in 1997, found only concrete foundations and air vents disguised as boulders. Radiation counters carried by the team registered erratic spikes before the group was ordered to leave. No surviving German wartime documents reference the site directly, though fragments from late 1944 Reich Ministry of Armaments memos mention a special relocation east of certain experimental departments, beyond operational zones. The signatory on these memos, ministerial rat Ernst Vogler, disappeared in May 1945 after last being seen in Königsberg. The Russian Ministry of Defense has never acknowledged the operation. Modern satellite images are deliberately low resolution, in the relevant grid square, obscured by persistent cloud cover in public archives. Whether Voron's nest housed unfinished superweapons, nuclear precursors, or something entirely different remains unknown. The mine shafts are still sealed. The surrounding forest has regrown, but locals insist the ground hums after heavy rain, and that military trucks arrive at night, even now. What the Soviets recovered in that winter of 1946 was not listed in any Nuremberg exhibit, nor in any Allied archive, suggesting that whatever was hidden in the Urals was meant to stay hidden, far beyond the end of the war. Some truths are too heavy to display in museums, too dangerous to be printed in textbooks. They linger instead in classified vaults, rusting beneath mountains, or drifting on the seabed, waiting for someone foolish enough to disturb them. But, Secrets have a gravity of their own, and once uncovered, they pull you in. By then, it's no longer a question of knowing the truth, but surviving it.